Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do a reading wrap-up, and it is nothing but science fiction, which you know I love, and so I'm really excited to talk about these books here. I have some really popular classics as well as some underhyped books, and I think I have a good variety here, something for everyone, which I always say, but is always true. And so hopefully you stick around, whether you're a sci-fi newbie or a sci-fi enthusiast like myself. All that being said, let's get started. First, let's talk about Space Opera September. If you missed my TBR video, I am participating in this month-long readathon that is hosted by Thomas from SFF 180. He is one of my favorite science fiction booktubers and a good friend of mine. If you missed it, we recently did a live show talking about space opera as well as space horror and other topics, so I'm definitely going to have that link down below if you haven't checked it out. It's a longer video, about an hour, so hopefully something you can listen to while you're drinking a cup of coffee or, working, whatever the case may be. And he put together this fantastic readathon. There should still be time to participate if you want to. I'm just about done my own TBR, and the first book that I'm planning to read for that I've of course completed, and that is the iconic Dune by Frank Herbert. I think most people are aware of this book because it is a sci-fi classic, but basically it is an epic sci-fantasy book that is all set on this planet of Arrakis that is a desert planet where water is held as gold because it is so rare and precious. And then you also have the spice trade. It is a drug that everyone is addicted to, and you get to see how the politics of the planet and the rest of the surrounding worlds play into the story. It's a story I went into without knowing a whole lot about, but I'll admit I picked up this book largely because of the movie coming out. And my overall impression was that I liked this book, but I was a bit underwhelmed or disappointed in my read-through of it, only because so many people consider this to be their all-time favorite science fiction book, and I thought it was good, but I didn't have that wow experience that I wanted it to be. Certainly I want to revisit this book in the future, and I do think that that might uplift it and really turn into a favorite, because certain books I do find that I take time to warm up to now that I know what the book is really like. I could see myself enjoying it more and more each time I read it. But I will have to say that this book really does include a lot of tropes, which makes it very predictable to read, but I fully acknowledge, I understand the fact that this book is tropey because it is the book that created a lot of those original tropes. And it's just the unfortunate fact that myself, as someone who reads a lot of modern science fiction fantasy, was able to predict a lot of what was going to happen in this book because I have seen it done in many other forms of both books and movies. And so it just didn't give me the same wow experience I think I would have if I had maybe read this book when it first came out and all of these ideas and concepts and plot twists were new to me as a reader or a media consumer. So I'll say that I definitely enjoyed it. I did not dislike it in any way, but I gave it only 3.5 stars, rounded up to 4 on Goodreads. And again, I hope to love it even more going through it again in the future. I thought it was good, and I'm really excited for the adaptation because weirdly enough, I found this book to be very action-packed and cinematic, and so I think that I will love it even more on the screen because I'm someone who actually likes to read slightly different things than I like to watch. And the whole time I was reading this, I was thinking this is good, but I'd rather be watching it on the screen. And a lot of my favorite books, I don't like how they're adapted and vice versa. So weirdly enough, I actually think I'm going to like the adaptation more than the original book, which I know is sacrilegious, but it just comes down to how I like to consume media. Does anyone else relate? Please tell me I'm not alone in that. And before I move on, I do want to mention that this was a casual buddy read with another science fiction booktuber, Monica from Mooni Reads. If you are somehow not subscribed to her channel, I really hope that you remedy that because she is one of my favorite content creators. I watch all of her videos and really love them. I think that she's really unique as an SFF creator because while she loves science fiction, she actually doesn't read almost any fantasy, which makes her quite different. Often people will say that they are science fiction booktubers, but realistically 75% of what they read is actually fantasy. And she is quite the opposite. She is pretty much nothing but sci-fi. And so if you're looking for more science fiction recommendations, more science fiction YouTubers to check out, and you're already subscribed to Thomas's channel, definitely go check out Monica as well. I'm going to have both their channels linked down below and in the cards if I get my act together during the editing stage. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed this one. I definitely love to hear from all of you what you think of Dune because it's pretty polarizing, it's pretty popular, and I'm just glad that I finally checked it out for myself. Next up for Space Opera September, I participated in a buddy read with Thomas, who I previously talked about. And in the book battle, he assigned me one book to read, and I did the same with him. And I succeeded in completing my book, but it doesn't mean I enjoyed it. So the book that he assigned to me was Do You Dream of Terra-Two by Temi. And this is an adult science fiction book that follows 6 young teenagers that are sent out to go on a mission to survey and start the colonization of a new planet that is very similar to Earth and hopefully will become a second planet for us to live on. Now, this book is classified as adult science fiction, but I will say that it really did read like young adult in my opinion, largely because of the ages of the characters. And my complaint with the book is that in a mission like this, I have done enough reading of memoirs and biographies of astronauts to know that there is some rigorous psychological testing that goes into place for the selection of the crews. And so I found it very hard to believe that they would go about selecting 6 of the most troubled teenagers I have ever seen. Certainly they're realistic, but there are so many things that they're struggling with. They have eating disorders, depression, anxiety, and they are just not very mentally sound, quite frankly. And so much of this book really deals with them trying to make peace with their own inner turmoils and trying to interact with each other and work their issues out. And I wanted the story to be about their mission, and the mission itself was very much secondary to this emotional personal story. I hate to be so critical of this book because I have some friends that really love it, including again Monica, but I'll be honest, this book did not work for me at all. I did not enjoy it. I cannot personally recommend it, although again other people love it, so try it for yourself, but it just was a complete miss for me and I did not enjoy it. Next, I read Perihelion Summer by Egan. This is a sci-fi novella that takes place in a near future where there is a black hole that is going to pass by our solar system, and so the scientists are predicting that it's going to wreak havoc on our planet. We follow a young man who is going off into a sort of lifeboat submarine in order to try to protect themselves from the initial waves or the environmental impact that they're expecting when this black hole comes by, and then the story goes from there and gets to see the long-term impact of what happens. I want to keep the synopsis short because the book is short itself. I picked this up because I'm very interested in the author. He is one that shows up online whenever I search for books that involve really hard or accurate science fiction, and I decided to start with this one. Again, it was a novella, it seemed easy to get into, but I have heard that it's not his best, and I will say that I was underwhelmed. I like the idea, I like the setup, I like them having to deal with this environmental crisis, but the actual story, the narrative structure, the characters just didn't completely work for me, so I can't really recommend this one. I am definitely still interested in reading more by this author. For those of you that have read more by him, I'd love to know which of his novels I should check out because I really like hard, difficult science fiction, and I hear that he can deliver on that. Moving on to something I do recommend, I want to talk about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. This is a classic science fiction story that follows a crew that is brought together to investigate and find and hopefully kill what they believe to be a sea monster that is taking out boats. However, what they find is something else, and they end up on a submarine that is captained by our famous Captain Nemo. I think a lot of people know quite a bit about the story going into it, but I actually did not know much about it. I did pick this up as part of my science fiction TBR. That's a previous video I did talking about a lot of iconic science fiction books that I still need to get to, and I'm really glad I took the time to pick this one up because I really enjoyed it. Someone made the prediction that I would really like Jules Verne because of the fact that he deals with a lot of hard science, and they were absolutely right in that prediction. So while this book is written years ago and certainly is dated in a way, I love that the author leans into the science that was available at that time and provides so much information about marine biology, about the ocean, and you get a lot of technical aspects surrounding the submarine. And for some readers, that could be seen as information overload. It could be seen as info dumping. It was a lot. At times it was too much for me, but at the same time, I absolutely loved it. I am someone who just loves to learn through my science fiction. I've always said that I am an armchair scientist, that I love the idea of learning these things, but I don't have the education to back that up, and I don't use science in my job. It's just not an area that I actually have a foundation in, but I want to learn about these things. And so I really liked Jules Verne kind of taking my hand and walking me through so much of this information. Thought it was super fascinating. I found the book to be very suspenseful because, again, I didn't know where it was going, and I would describe this book as science fiction adventure, although it leans almost into horror. There are some sea creatures and some exciting moments, and I loved it. So if you have not tried out for yourself, personally, I'd recommend it, especially for those of you that share my love for learning through science fiction, because I found the information in this book absolutely fascinating. Loved it so much. And because I love that one so much, I then decided to pick up Journey to the Center of the Earth, also by Jules Verne. And this is a story of a young man who gets pulled into an adventure to go to the center of the Earth when his uncle uncovers some possible information how to get there, and they go on this grand adventure. I was excited to pick up this one because I thought it was going to be very similar to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and it was, and it also wasn't. To me, it was a similar adventure, but just not as good. So I didn't think the characters were as good. I didn't think the plot was exciting. I'll be honest, I just think that marine biology and the ocean are way more interesting than geology and the study of rocks. So I just didn't care about the science as much. And I gotta be honest, without spoiling anything, I found the ending to be very disappointing, very anticlimactic, and I definitely wanted more. So I would definitely recommend everyone start with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and only pick up this one if you're looking to kind of complete it or check it off your classics list. Next up, I read Numenon by Marina, Lostetter, and this is a science fiction story set in a future where we have discovered the technology to allow us to go to other planets. And so a bunch of different generational ships are sent out on various missions to explore the outer reaches of our galaxy. And this is a story that, like many other popular science fiction books, is set over different perspectives and also over different times. So because of the setup of this story, we actually not only changed the perspective of the characters, but we have different time jumps as we get to see first the setup of these ships being built and them deciding to actually send clones out on these ships. But then we get to see the progression of these missions over the course of a long period of time. I've read these kind of books before, and my main complaint is that typically with the jumps in both POV and timelines, I find that it can be very jarring, but I actually found that this one was very easy to follow. So I would recommend it to those that perhaps like something like 7Es, but want something that is a little bit more self-contained, a little bit shorter. Is the beginning of a trilogy. At this time, I have not yet continued on. I would love to know if anyone has and if they recommend reading the last two books. But I thought this one was really enjoyable, easy to follow, and again, gave a really epic story, but in a very accessible way. So I would recommend this one. I thought it was a lot of fun. From there, I read On a Red Station, Drifting by Aliette, and this is a science fiction novella that is set on a space station, as the title would suggest, that is actually controlled by an artificial intelligence that is possibly not working as it should be. This is set in a future world where people are able to implant the memories of their past ancestors in order to give them guidance and support. And so I really liked the ideas explored in this book. I also really like the cultural elements. It brings in aspects of Asian culture that the author draws from her own perspective into the story. The story itself would be my only complaint, that I found the plot to be a little bit weak, or rather thin, and so I liked the world building, I liked the characters, I thought it was a very interesting concept, but I really struggled to summarize the plot because it really did not feel like the focus of the novella. Needless to say, I definitely enjoyed reading this, and I would love to read more by this author, so recommendations below for those of you that have read by her before. And finally, the last book I read was The Martian Race by Gregory Benford. And this is a book that is set in a near future, well, technically our present day, where there is a space race where different private organizations are trying to get to Mars in order to win a prize. This book very much draws from real things that are happening right now, so it's very exciting to see an idea explored of how this might look. And so this book jumps through time a couple times. times because you actually get to see when they are first landing on Mars and surveying it, and then it jumps later on to see more so the colonization of Mars as it progresses. This book is very accessible. I would kind of compare it to a light version of something like Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson, because it takes a lot of hard science fiction ideas. The author himself is a professor of science, and so he really draws from predictions of what this would look like and brings that in, of course, writing a fictional story centering around a small group of characters, so it's easy to follow, easy to relate to. And I thought it was interesting, although for whatever reason it just wasn't the best. I don't think the characters were standout, and I don't think it was as gripping as it could have been, but it was definitely interesting. I like those ideas. I love the idea of seeing people land on Mars, hopefully within my lifetime, and so this book definitely sparked that excitement again for me. And if that sounds up your alley, this one might be one you want to check out. Alright, we've made it to the end of the video here. I'd love to hear your opinions down below. Most importantly, tell me your opinion on Dune. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Or do you fall somewhere in between like I do? Don't forget, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to Thomas and Monica's channel for more science fiction content. I always say that it feels like there aren't enough science fiction booktubers on the internet, and so I always like to really uplift the channels of my fellow creators because I think they're doing great things and bringing you even more recommendations. If you're new to my channel, you can consider subscribing to me. I do read a lot of adult science fiction as well as fantasy, horror, and thrillers. You can help me out by giving this video a thumbs up, sharing it around online, and if you hit the little notification bell, you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.